The previous 3 months, from November going backwards last year, 2024, there had been 15,000 cases in court on sexual and gender-based violence. 10,000 were of child molestation. Majority of the people molesting children are people these children know. Growing up as a firstborn, when your body is changing, I couldn't talk to my father about what's happening within me. You start liking girls. There's nobody to ask questions about how to go about these things. I grew up in the church as a Christian, and the messaging was, you have to preserve your virginity until you're married. But nobody is speaking to me about the changes in my body during adolescence because my body is getting excited. There are no instruments to navigate this dissatisfaction. So what people secretly do is to go out and explore with others, in secret. I'm equally meeting lots and lots of married religious people whose sex lives are in the shit. you know.
Welcome back to yet another edition of your favorite show, Manspeqtive Africa. I'm your host, Danny Shodongo, aka the son of Kano, and today we are privileged to host a powerhouse. His name is Rick Poet, but some call him Onyango Otieno.
That's
How are you
right.
doing, my brother?
I'm very happy.
Welcome to the show.
Asante sana.
You've done nails. You said Kenyans were calling them what? Patco.
Grufe. That's so funny, man. I didn't know nails are so political.
But
Yeah.
why did you polish your nails?
For the fun of it.
For the fun of it.
Yeah, I'm an artist. I'm a colorful person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ninasumbua watu sana hiyo.
Imeleta shida mingi sana. A man is just enjoying his life. There's nothing more to it.
Before we continue, I think for those who are watching this show, of course, the hashtag is Manspeqtive Africa. Let us know what you think. Follow us on YouTube. It is Manspeqtive Africa with the Q. And of course, we are on KTN Home every Wednesday at 10:30 p.m. And if you're watching us on KTN, head over to YouTube and check our content. You can connect with me, Danish Odongo, on all social media platforms. Rix, for those who don't know you, what do you do?
Many things.
Many things.
I am a writer.
Okay.
I'm a poet. I'm a mental health activist. I tell stories around masculinities, mental health, and also sexual and reproductive health and rights. I think it's really important that men involve themselves in the lives of other people outside their lives, right? But also work as hard as they can to understand who they are in their minds and in their hearts and in their spirits. So I talk about male identities and the complexities within that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've hosted you before, and you shared a very interesting story, which I'm not going to today. But the last time we hosted you, you mentioned that you'd like to come back and talk about men and sex.
Yes, which I love very much.
Is it the sex you love, the stories?
Both. Yeah.
Why is this story, why is this conversation or this topic important to you?
I think also because, first of all, I love sex.
Okay.
Yeah. I love talking about sex. I didn't grow up having the space to talk about sex. And how I came to learn about sex was in not very healthy ways, right? Growing up as a firstborn, when your body is changing, I couldn't talk to my father about what's happening within me. You start liking girls. There's nobody to ask questions about how to go about these things. And then you have access to pornography. And that becomes your school of sex. And yet this is not the healthiest way to come to get to know it. I happened to be abused as well as my first introduction to sex with another person. And I didn't even know that was abuse because of how it happened. There was no force, it looked like I had consented to it, but then there were very many levels of abuse there. But then even later, coming to learn that I'm a sexual being, I couldn't ask anybody anything about it in church. At home, in school, there was literally nobody. I had to go out of my way to find literature that even would teach me about my own body, teach me what consent is, teach me what it's like to orgasm, what it's like to want sex, not want sex, all those things, right? And in the world I'm living in, it seems as though men know so much about sex, but it's not true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Expand more, a little bit more about that.
So in our world today, when, for example, when I said the first time I said that the first time I had sex was when I was 20, I was mocked by a lot of people, especially men. They would say, "Oh, you started late.
A late bloomer.
As we were at 16 or 17, you're already doing this thing." And yet on this other side, there are too many women who are complaining that they're not getting satisfied. So I make it make sense. Something is missing in between here. Something is missing. And for me, I'm curious about that. Like,
But men say that it's, your satisfaction is your responsibility.
It's also men saying that. You see, there's a problem. There's just a problem to that. Nobody ever taught me how to make a woman feel cared for sexually. Being that I like women, I love having sex with women. I didn't know what a woman's body looks like sexually. There is what you see, but then the sexual inner life is a little different because people have different desires. How do you talk about these desires with them? Where do you meet in conversation when you're preparing for sex, for example? You're not taught this by anybody. It's like the society I came from just assumed I'll know.
And we assume that you'll be good at it.
I'll be good at it.
Yeah. See, even if it's damaging, it's assumed that you'll be good at it because it's natural.
Yeah. So one of the biggest squabbles I had about that upbringing was I grew up in the church as a Christian, and the messaging was you have to preserve your virginity until you're married, right? So no sex until then. But nobody is speaking to me about the changes in my body during adolescence because my body is getting excited.
Yeah.
See? And it's not just about the marriage conversation, it's about where I am as a teenager. That now my eyes are, like I'm starting to see women differently. They're no longer just the girls I was playing with. Now I'm feeling something, like mara I'm shy, mara my body is getting heated up when I'm around a girl or a woman, and those kind of things. There's no space. I couldn't get any, right? And then now, let's say I'm in my 20s or whatever, and now, I'm starting to date. There's still no conversation about what courting looks like. I didn't get that. I think majority of people don't get that. If you're privileged as a Christian, for example, maybe there are certain classes you go to and you're taken through some workshops. We didn't get any of that, and I would assume neither did my parents, right? But then there's a very strong message: you should not have sex until you get married. And then now I've grown up and I'm equally meeting lots and lots of married religious people whose sex lives are in the and there's a lot of shame surrounding that. You cannot say that you're struggling sexually and you're married and you're Christian or you're Muslim or whoever. You cannot say. There is still no space even today to talk about this world. And yet this is part and parcel of your biology. You didn't bring it upon yourself. You were just born a human being, and then these things are happening to you.
So let me take you just back a little bit. I think talking about, the church, talking about purity and talking about waiting, for me, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because that is their religious belief. That is our religious belief. I'm a Christian too, and I believe in the Bible. But I think the gap that we don't address, that, okay, yes, we are telling you to wait, but now your body is behaving this type of way. I think that's what we need to address. Because I think the damage we do to young people is to make these feelings to be like it is sinful. So, for example, desiring a woman is called lust. And lust has a very, terrible connotation, especially in the book of Galatians. I think 3:16 or something like that. It talks about some of this sin. One of them is lust. But I think there's a place that you can say that my body desires this thing. However, because my Bible, or the book I believe in, requires me to wait, I will find a way to channel this energy. Because we're never taught how to channel that energy. I was never taught how to channel that energy. So here you are, you're a teenager, you're turned on, you're liking women, but you don't know what to do with this. What do? You resort into dark ways to manage it. So there's a whole lot of, I think, self-gratification that goes on there. There's a whole lot of pornography that then gets into, and sometimes even in terms of how we talk about these things, the verbal way we express these things. So these are all, sometimes I can call them unhealthy ways of expressing this really stifled desire, which is human. So I think the gap there, in my opinion, is that we should address the issue in a way that then helps people, so that they don't, because I was never even told that, by the way, when you feel this type of way, you can actually go to the gym, and the gym might help.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need to join a local football, and by running around and getting all that energy, you come back, it helps you. But you're just told, don't have sex, but not told what else to do.
Yeah.
And then now you come home and you realize, okay.
But there's a larger context as well to that, because when I look at even that religious upbringing, it had a very confusing relationship with just the general idea of pleasure. Just having a good time was really frowned upon. If you really think about it, it's not just about sex. Like, it was really just having a good time was really, it's sort of like, to be a good Christian, you're this person who's just hardened and tightened in a certain way, and you only read the Bible, man. This is the book of life, and there's almost nothing else outside that. So that tightness remains in your body, and it affects how you see yourself. It affects how you see other people. To the point that you do not know how to relax, because you have to work hard to enter heaven. You see, your wealth is stored up there, so you have to work to be rich, so that you enjoy the wealth that you enjoy when you die. But it takes us away from being present. You really cannot be present in your body. You can't be present, and as a result, it is too obvious that you can't be able to engage sexually, right? For me, I think it's such a huge disservice that we do to each other and to children and to young people, that on one side you've demonized this thing for the longest time, like you say, without equipping them even with information about how to go about this energy. And then, so now there's this rite of passage that is called marriage, and then you neither are you preparing them for this rite of passage as well, and then they get into it, right? Because they were looking forward.
You built anticipation.
It's crazy anticipation, because it's years upon years
of being told, just wait.
And then you get there and you realize you don't know anything. You don't know anything.
Or what you learned it. I mean, it's porn, pornography. That's what you learn from all these things. So you think that, oh, by the way,
this is all there is, right? And you think this is all the truth there is to sex, right? I was sharing with you that I have talked to a lot of married people who are also, say, Christian in this regard, that intimate to me they're really struggling in their sex life. And you find that sometimes a good majority of the rest of the marriage looks okay. And that's the issue. A good majority of the marriage looks okay. But there is a lot of sexual dissatisfaction. You see, and this is something we were looking forward to enjoy in marriage. See, but still, there are no instruments to navigate this dissatisfaction. So what people secretly do is to go out and explore with others, you know, in secret, where their partner does not know about. And then many times it comes with very crazy repercussions. Oh, mara umezaa nje, you come with diseases, you know, or you stop paying attention emotionally to the space at home because your head is not there. You see, because that space does not exist. You see, I mean, there are many stories even of Catholic priests who have whole families outside the church. It is happening.
I saw the story of a lady who said that all along they thought their father had another family. They were the other family. They were the other family. The other family was the main family. You were the other family. Yeah.
And there's a friend also who told me, like, they were when they were going for the burial of their father.
Yeah.
It's the first time they were introduced to another family who also were mourning their father. It's the same guy.
Like
it's the same guy.
Like recently when Jirongo decided to, you know, bring all the children and then said, mjuane, mkuje msikuje hapa hivi. And then I found that very interesting. So Rix, I think there are many layers to this conversation. One, I feel like certain people take certain traditions and they make them biblical. Well, they're not really biblical. Like, for example, that idea of being a Christian is all about, you know, kukula ndimu, surangumu, and not having fun. That can be maybe it could be a Presbyterian tradition, it could be a Baptist tradition, but Baptist is not Christian. It's an expression of Christianity, because also remember the Bible is a very cultural book. So when we adopt the ways of the people who brought the Bible, and then we take them as the truth. So I think also there's a place for actually, you know, questioning the Bible and unplug and unpacking it, so that you're not really caught up in honoring traditions, mostly of the people who brought the Bible, and you ignore the Bible. Because I think for me, the Bible talks about it is for freedom's sake that, you know, that Christ died for you. It is for freedom. Let nobody else put a yoke on you again. So, you know, freedom means, I'm not saying that now freedom means now go and do all these things, but I mean freedom means that you're not supposed to be burdened by extra layers of tradition. Me, I love to have fun. Me, I like adventure. Me, I like to question things. I like to read books. I like to go have a good time. I might have a bottle of beer. I might, you know, all these things. But, you know, if you find a proper Christian, unaniambia wewe unahitaji kufanya nini? Kuokoka, you know. So I just wanted to clarify that is a very cultural thing. But so, why do you think that many of these people who have been raised to anticipate sex in marriage, then when they arrive there, things refuse to stand, literally and figuratively?
So, you know, anticipation breeds anxiety.
Yeah. Anxiety.
Yes, it breeds anxiety.
Yeah.
And what anxiety does to your body, it contracts your nerves. It contracts your nerves.
Yeah.
So, technically, you stop functioning. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So blood cannot circulate properly.
Yeah.
And for pleasure to happen, blood has to circulate properly.
Yeah.
That's why people faint.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because blood is not circulating in your head or in your body properly.
Yeah.
And the same thing sex-wise. When blood stops circulating out of anxiety, which is now, you know, there's just a lot of drama happening in your head, right? To put it in simple words, there's a lot of drama happening in your head. Am I doing this the right way?
Am I good enough?
Am I good enough?
Will I satisfy them?
Will I satisfy
and it's both
them?
ways, actually. It's women and
right.
men.
Yeah. You know, for heterosexual couples.
Yeah.
And this happens to everybody, really, more than we would like to admit. So you're there finally, and then, oh, now what do I do? What do I do? All the information I've gathered about this thing, is it going to be enough? Is it the right information? Can I put it into practice? But the other reality is, there are many people who claim that they're in public life, they claim that they're waiting for marriage before having sex, but they are actually having sex even in the church as Christians and whatnot, which I like very much. Which I like very much.
You like to break rules a lot.
I was telling a friend, Juicy,
Yeah.
that I find Christianity very fascinating because you find Danish and Ricks could be going to the same church, but their philosophy about that faith is so different. One thing Danish is doing that Ricks is not doing, then there's something else Ricks is doing that kuna dem fulani alikuja akaniambia, hey, Jesus, Ricks, me, I love Jesus, but I also love so he told me, I was like, hey, do you, boo? It's so fascinating to me because the standard does not work for so many people. It does not work. And you see, you're being castigated with this, hey, no fornication, which was also somebody's idea of, then fornication is wrong. But on what basis? Like you're saying now, cultural, right? And of course, there are other good reasons which totally.
Yeah, I think we avoid a scenario where we question people's faith because faith is a very complex thing.
Yes, and personal.
Yeah. And the Bible talks about those things. And the Bible actually is the authority book that governs most Christians' lives. So we let's not even go into trying to understand why they believe in that. Let's just say that's what they believe in, and it's fine. Yeah. But I think the question here is to help them, equip them very well. So you're going on. Sorry to cut you short.
For example, will the church be open to sex education?
That's a good question, I
within
think.
the church.
I think I like that.
See? Yeah. Because there has been a lot of lobbying, right, by activist groups and some departments even within the gender circles of government to introduce sex education, comprehensive CSE, comprehensive sexual education in the school curriculum. But the biggest fighter to that is the church.
Yeah.
See, is the church willing to open up that conversation? Because I often feel we have been accustomed to burying things under the rag. There are problems we have to face, but we are denying these problems. We are denying that we need some kind of change. We are denying that. And so as a result, there's a continuance of evidence showing that things are bad, but we are so rigid to say, if you teach children about sex, if you teach young people about sex, they will misuse it more, they will do it even more. But it's happening. It is happening. People are starting to get sexually active as teenagers. It's not changing. There is research even up to 1990, back in the day, where like teenage pregnancies are just above the roof, guys. Like, we cannot continue burying our heads in the sand. So for me, that's an issue I have with the church, for example, in regards to matters sex conversations. So because that would introduce a framework maybe even to prepare couples to help teenagers with sexualities, right? There are churches which have attempted to do that outside what, say, like mainstream churches have been doing. And I really appreciate those efforts. But by far,
I think Mavuno has done quite a bit of that.
So, that's really good because I would have loved to experience that when I was still there, right? It would have helped me, by the way, avoid some very many troubles that I had to go through with sex issues, right? As a teenager, for example. But by far and large, many kids and young people and married people have a lot of questions about sex. And as a society, conservative as it is, we are pretending these issues are not important. That's my biggest problem. It's not even ati sijui faith ama sijui nini. No, you keep your faith. I will fight for your right to keep it. But these are also realities. And if this faith is not helping you accept realities? Is it faith? You know.
But Rix, you know, I think part of the reason why there's a lot of resistance to sex education in the church is a quote here, which I think is attributed to a guy called Andrew Smith. I don't know who this person is, but he said that people fear what they don't understand.
Definitely.
So I think people who do sexual reproductive health rights like you and many other lobbies need to find ways to engage the church consistently and not in a non-confrontational way, because I feel like sometimes when you are coming from a place where you're saying you're wrong and I'm right, already there's no conversation that can happen there. Like I mentioned to you, Offset, the Bible says that, come, let us reason together. Though your sins are as red as scarlet, I'll make them as white as snow. So if the Bible in the book of Isaiah talks about, come, let us reason together. Reasoning together means that, okay, tell me your point of view, I tell you my point of view. Let's find a middle ground. But both sides are coming at each other like, you are wrong, we are right. We are right, you're wrong. So the church does that, and the reproductive health rights people also do that, you know. I want to give you an example. I remember there was a story of a certain church that I used to go to. And this church, whenever leaders were caught, you know, having had premarital sex, and a child came or they were discovered, they had to be stopped and they had to stand on the pulpit and apologize to the congregation. You know. And I had very big problems with that because, one, I felt like it was quite double standard. Because in the list of sins, there are many sins, including lying. Okay, when you lie, why don't we get you up there to say that, by their church, I lied, nimedanganya, you know. But then there's a story of one of the people who was actually found alleged to have stolen some money from the government. This person was from that church. And I'm now expecting that man to be stood up there and to apologize, saying, okay, dear congregation, because I am a corrupt government officer, I've stolen money, and this money was meant for your children's health, it was meant for your roads, and I've stolen it, you know. I've sinned before man, I've sinned before God. I apologize and I'm willing to return it plus interest. Just like Jesus did to the tax collector. Yeah, but you know what happened? They wrote a statement saying that those who are against that man or that woman for that matter, you know. So I realized that these rules are very double standards. We enforce rules around sex because first it's deeply cultural, because remember we used to insist on virginity upon marriage. Remember, even in there certain cultures where we even used to put less of chin so that we find out whether there's blood. You know, it was a very ingrained. So when you talk about sex, then that is very something that already resonates with our traditional beliefs, and so we come and support it a lot. But when it comes to other forms of sin, lying, other forms of sin, stealing, other forms of sin, and that's why we don't have a problem with the head of state donating money. We don't know where it's from, because we say the money that is given by the right hand, we should not tell the left hand. But if you go there and you have a child out of wedlock, these people will likely to guillotine you. But I'm saying, yes, I understand that. But can you compare the gravity of somebody who has stolen 2 billion shillings, money meant for poor mothers, money meant for poor people? You steal this money. I think you have done worse sin than the person who has made these people pregnant. And I'm not saying that he worse sin in terms of judgment by God, whatever. I just mean as a moral question. You cannot compare somebody who has stolen 1 lane of Thika Road. A whole lane of Thika Road has been stolen. You know the impact of that? That then there's more accident, people's lives. Then this bad design leads to drainage issues. These drainage issues have drowned many people have died. It's murder. But we don't see that this is also sinful. You told me previously, and I found it very interesting, that there are people who anticipate, and on that day when they've been prepared premarital sex, and then they go, and then they realize that, one, there's a lot of anxiety, and anxiety and sex don't go well. It's like oil and water; they never mix, or it's like whatever. What do you think we need to do so that even though we believe in this purity culture, how do we equip people better so that when they arrive there, they arrive and, it doesn't become the reason why it leads to a lot of dissatisfaction?
I will answer that slightly differently.
Okay.
I think on the surface, we believe in purity culture, but in principle,
tunapenda usherati.
In principle, Danish, in principle, you'd be surprised even that pastor you go to every Sunday. It's not who they think they are, who you think they are. Last year, 2024, I was invited to a panel on the 16 days of activism. And I was talking about men's mental health and sexuality. There was a man, an officer of the ODPP, who came with staggering statistics around sexual and gender-based violence, which is how I'm choosing to answer this question. And the statistics were saying that in the previous 3 months, from November going backwards last year, 2024, there had been 15,000 cases in court. 3 months, 15,000 cases in court on sexual and gender-based violence. 3 months, and this is just one part of crime, sexual and gender-based violence. And of these 15,000 cases, Danish, 10,000 were of child molestation.
Child molestation.
Let that sink in. 10,000, in fact, it's 9,800, which I just round off. 10,000 of 15,000 of the previous 3 months reported cases in court, cases that are done, cases that are just being introduced. 15,000, 10,000 of them, child sexual molestation. And these records are not even made public. He told me that they do an annual report to the president. So I tweeted about the statistics he gave because I asked him to give me that paper, and then I tweeted it, and then some lawyer reached out to me like, where did you get this information? We ourselves can't get it. ODPP don't make this information public. I don't know for what reason. See? And the number after that were for indecent acts with child. It was like 1,000 and something. So they had broken down Nairobi, North Rift region, Kiambu, the areas, right? So you imagine of these 10,000 kids. So after indecent child, it was rape, and then, GBV with women and blah, 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 right? And then men also featuring somewhere there in between. Majority of the people molesting children are people these children know. And what the cases show many times is their fathers, it's their stepfathers, it's their uncles, it's their cousins, it's the guy, the neighbor guy, whatnot, nini. See? So before we even just think about the anxiety yenye inakuja hapo premarital nini, let us look at this thing wholesomely. That's what will help us. Let's not just concentrate on this marriage part, because there is sex beyond. Sex is happening beyond that space, right? These people show up to church every Sunday and Saturday, or whichever day you go to church, right? And the ones who also practice other religions, they're religious people, bro, right? They wanatoa sadaka. And nakungamia Mungu Mwenyezi, nanyi ndugu zangu, repenting every Sunday. But at home, they are abusing their children. They are abusing their wives, right? So there has to be a bigger conversation about our relationship with sex, because there is no way, children don't have that mouthpiece. They don't know. They don't have. Like, feminism with women can go on Twitter, for example, and there's space. Children almost have nothing. So who will you tell? And it's your family that starts by threatening you, ukisema, this and this, that will happen to you, So we have to interrogate, because this is data we cannot run away from. It's not at your premarital sex, then after sex. No, this is numbers. We have to look at that ugliness and say, by the way, kuna shida. And we cannot continue treating sex in the ways we have been treating it and think we are going to be fine. Because these children will grow up, all right, with all these trauma, all these wounds, and still get married again, and probably continue with that cycle of abuse. We can't keep going on like that, brother.
But, oh my goodness. So, Rix, your theory is that because there's a lot of suppression of conversation around sex, it's exploding in many other violent ways.
That's what I'm saying.
Tell me more about that.
You see, I'll give you an example of post-election violence in 2007. You're a historian. You know the critical issues Kenyans had been grappling with before the river banks broke. Then, right? And because you're aware, you know there were clashes in 1997.
Yes.
You know there were clashes in 1992.
This
was a build-up that had taken years and years and years. That is what is happening with our sex lives. There's a build-up that is taking years and years. People are being abused. People are being suppressed. People are even being killed. Because the levels of rape that we are grappling with in this country is atrocious. It's just atrocious. See, if we do not gain the courage to face this thing with its truth, we are lying when we say we want to build a country. We are lying. We are lying when we say we are building economies for our children. We are lying because these very children are the people we are killing. We are lying when we say we want healthy relationships. There's a policy government launched in 2023.
The family protection policy.
That one, right? And I had a look at it. And if you just give it a glance, of course, there are very many, the intention, you can tell, the intention is like, oh, I can see how we want to promote healthy families and blah, 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 blah. When it comes to this part about sex, things are still very ambiguous. It's why? Because we're afraid of going in there. You know, we are very afraid of going in there. So how do we get people within these institutions who will be courageous enough to say something needs to change?
So, Rix, while you're talking, I was just thinking about this because I also do a lot of mental health work. And I remember that there's something called paedophilia disorder. And it's a disorder characterized by recurring, intense, sexually arousing fantasies, urges, or behavior involving children, usually 13 years old or younger. And this thing is often caused by, it's an attraction to young boys. You know, there's a whole issue around molestation, young girls or both, and they may be attracted only to children or to children and adults. Doctors diagnose pedophilia when people feel greatly distressed or become less able to function well because of their attraction to children or when they have acted on their urges, you know. So I feel like there's a whole lot of conversation we need to have around well-being, emotional well-being, emotional, psychological, mental health well-being, because even some of these things that we do is a byproduct of that, you know. So we can't say that all these 9,800 cases have only been caused by the fact that you know, we don't talk enough about this topic, you know. And I think we got to really be you know, we got to really extrapolate factors properly, but also contextualize, saying there are many other issues. Out of these 9,900, there could be mental health issues. Out of these 10,000 cases, there could be many other issues, including trauma and wounds that are growing, you know. So I feel like a far better conversation to have is to talk about holistic wellness.
Yes.
What does holistic wellness look like in the area of sexual reproductive health, in the area of family? Because you're right that the family unit is where a lot of who we are formed. And if that place is toxic, if that place is violent, if that place is the place where I know very many girls, I know a couple of girls who were raped by, one of them was raped by the grandfather. By the grandfather. And she got HIV. Another one was by the stepfather, got HIV. And
that happens in some parts of this country. It's a very cultural thing. For example, if a woman is married and she's come with a child who's a girl, and this father doesn't see this girl as my blood. I've seen a lot of that sometimes happening where you find that this father makes a move on this girl. And I personally think it's usually to punish the mother or to ruin this girl's life. The worst also happens if this woman comes to the son. The son also is often mistreated in a way that then, ruins the son so that he doesn't have a potential to grow, So I think the conversation that, what do we need to do, Ricks, so that we don't just, sweep things under the rug, especially in the family setting, but think about what do we need to do to ensure that our families are growing wholesomely and we're pursuing holistic wellness.
I'll tell you something that we were talking with my friend 2 days ago at this recording. It fascinates me how we talk of revolution. People are willing to die by the bullet on the streets for a better country, a better future. Rightly so, rightly so. But I ask, we are on the streets, but at home, we are still abusing children. We are pointing fingers at public funds being stolen, rightly so. But we don't have checks at home for accountability, for our own misdeeds towards each other in partnership. If we can develop systems within ourselves that again might be called institutions, where care is at the center. Care, just care. We are a very careless society. And by careless, I don't mean careless in the way we used to think of stubborn children or whatever. Careless in the sense of insensitivity towards other people's plight, insensitivity to our own plights. If you've grown feeling unseen, there is a likelihood you will make another person feel unseen when you feel now it's your time to enjoy power, right? So the conversation for me is to begin to interrogate our consciousness with care, because care is what is at the center of justice and courage and what we call love. Without care, there is no love. Without care, there is no courage. Without care, there is no country, Danish. There is no leadership without care, right? Our thinking around leadership is this authoritarian ways of doing things, and I'm the one in charge, and these are the laws and the rules. Without care, the laws and the rules are for wooden chips, not humans. See? So if we can start imagining that, for me, however that looks like in different cultures, for example, because Danish, I'm lucky that I come from the same community with you. We can always sit down and think, what cultural ways were the Luo showing care to each other? Then we go back and say, there was this and that and that and that. There are ways which there was violence even within the culture, and still are. I mean, even like, for example, there's been this circulating video about the lady in Kisii and the burial things, nini. You can feel there's no care there. You don't need to be told about the cultural practice. You can just see there's no care, right? So for me, it's the care part has to begin. We have to begin there. So because people will always practice things differently, there won't be one standard of showing care to everybody, right? Depending on their culture, and even within the law. So if you imagine the care, then now we can start having a conversation. How do we care for children? How do we care for adolescents? How do we care for couples that want to be married and, this is the way they want to live their lives? And that means you'll be opening other channels of conversation, from how leadership looks like, the workplace, your gender identity, your role as a father or a wife or whoever, it will bring up those tiny little conversations. And now even in the home, now we'll probably be having meetings at home about what do people think about how we live here, right?
But Rich, I have had time to think about this and have a theory around it, that it is much easier to seem to fight for the nation and for bigger things than to fight for yourself 100%. And for your love. 100%. Because to fight for the nation might not sometimes require a lot of accountability. Yes. So you're a national hero, you're loved by the nation, can take a bullet for my country. But where it stops is where you can take a bullet for your son or for your daughter or for your wife, because that requires that you face yourself and you face your shortcomings and you face that maybe perhaps I don't have emotional vulnerability. I don't know how to show myself present, and it requires a lot harder work to show up every day. Because then another thing is the home setting. In the city here in Nairobi, you can be a Raila who's coming to a rally with 3 million people with your fist up in the air. And for a day, Tuna, Ruto must go. And then you go home. You've only done one rally in a week. But home, you go back every day. And these people know you. They know you whether you are a charlatan. They know you whether you're a liar. They know you whether you're abusive. They know you whether you're loving, whether you're caring, whether you're somebody who's present. So I think even in fact, when these leaders are coming out here and these revolutionaries, we need to interview their wives and their husbands and their spouses and their children and find out who is this man? Who is this woman? How because if you don't treat your family right, there's no way you're going to treat the nation right, Rix. If you do not treat your family right, you will not treat the nation right. Because the care that you have at home is the care that you extend to your constituency. But many of us would rather be revolutionaries and we'd rather take a bullet for the nation. While we miss our children's special days. We forget their birthdays. We are brutal and we're very quick to punish, but very slow to affirm. We can sometimes be very harsh to their mother while thinking that my children are safe even though I'm brutal to their mother. Or maybe my children are safe even though I'm brutal to their father. I don't know, we always sort of compartmentalize these things and they think that as long as I am a good citizen, as long as I'm a revolutionary, as long as I'm a political leader, as long as I'm somebody who's important, I have a big office and I have an office where you have to knock and book an appointment to come in. But this can somehow atone for my shortcomings at home.
Yes. Yeah, because it's easy to mask. It's easier to mask. It's the easy work. I dress well. I'm a celebrity. I'm a political figure. I'm a CEO somewhere. I'm a big person. And you're only speaking to your ego. That's the easy thing to do. So as a nation, as a world really, because this is really connected to what's happening everywhere else, we have to face ourselves and then face each other. That's just the truth. And if we do not have the courage to do that, there will be no space for care, no space for love. That's just it. So beyond sex, when we bring in the conversation for accountability and care, because where there will be accountability and care, there will be humanization automatically, right? Because I will understand, Danish, you do have some weaknesses, just as I do have some weaknesses, right? And when things happen, how do we go about it? In a way that I do not feel like you're minimizing my pain, right? In a way that I will also humanize your humanness. Like, you have weaknesses and sometimes we go out of the way to do things not in a very clean way, right? How do we develop systems from the home? Because in many of these places, children that are abused by their parents and their siblings sometimes and people around them, there's never any sense of justice from that level. And this is every day. Every day you're witnessing injustice in your home. Every day. That's what you'll take outside. You will take it to school. You will bully other people. You will take it to the workplace. You will abuse your colleagues.
And you become a police officer and you have the gun. Now you shoot.
You're frustrated. You want to feel powerful. That's what's going to happen.
And if you're a pedophile, absolutely, then now you made it out.
Perfect grounding.
So the home is where all this, and I'm glad that this story began as one, the initial idea was to talk about purity culture. But I'm glad that you and I have the ability to understand that these things are larger than that. That could be what
it looks like the symptom, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. But the base of the iceberg is that at the home, we have this culture, and it is tied to purity culture for real, where I used to joke that in some churches, you'd rather, we can appreciate you if you're a virgin, but you're a virgin who's a liar. But we don't mind the second part, but as long as you're a virgin, you know, because then we are more concerned about the masks we wear than who we truly are as a people. And while it looks like, oh, by the way, you know me, I've never had sex, I've never done this, but you've had people, you're a mean woman or a mean man, you know, and you are somebody who's emotionally unavailable, you know. So I think what we're trying to say is that many things are connected, and one of it is that the root of it is this cultural identity, this religious cultural identity that we've taken, where there's a lot of hypocrisy, where we can show up as pastors, but we are stealing from the poor. We can say we are authority, and then we decide that you will not go to heaven. Like one of the famous mightiest men of God said that a lady would not go to heaven because he had laughed when the mighty man of God was speaking, you know. What? Yeah, he said it publicly, it was on record. He said, you will not go to heaven. You will not be present where me and my father will be. He said, what the hell?
I would laugh. But you see, because they know you are fascinated with the idea of heaven, so they can say something like that.
That's not even that could be one of it. But even for me, a bigger problem is that because of this religious and cultural hierarchy, we do not interrogate things. Yes. That man has no right. That man cannot stop you from going to heaven, because if you read your Bible correctly, it is not some mighty prophet who will decide whether you go or not. There's a criteria of going, you know, and those people who believe in the Bible know that there's a criteria to go there. But my issue is that just the way we don't put these people, hold them accountable, it starts from home. Yes. We don't hold our parents accountable, because if we hold them accountable, they might curse us. Yeah. So they'd rather wreak havoc. Yeah. My father would not pay for our school fees. Yeah, a father would rather wreak havoc, but we don't, you know, authorities. Who is the father who blesses and is the one who curses? You're already cursing me by how you're treating me. Exactly. So I don't need to wait for any other curse, you know, because this is already bad, you know, but then rising up, you know. And then it goes on in the village. When I was in the village, Rick's, one of my schoolmates was violently killed by a lady who just stabbed them up. And of course, when the chief was asked, the chief said, oh, they were fighting, you know, it was an Ugali issue. It wasn't an Ugali issue. This girl, it's alleged that she had killed before. Oh. And she escaped and came to our village. And she used to go to school with a sword, with a knife, with a pocket knife. And the teachers were afraid. So you see how this lack of accountability is usually their layers. It starts from their house. Then it comes into our community. Then it comes into our churches, religious spaces. Then eventually it becomes a national problem. So even though this conversation began as a purity culture thing, I think ultimately what we're saying is that I think we need more accountability. We need to have more accountability. We need to hold people more accountable. And because of that, then maybe perhaps we can build a nation where these statistics, which I was just reading, Rick's, I think. It's insane. Let me just read for you the statistics. 1 in 9 girls and 1 in 20 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse assault. 82% of all victims under 18 are female. Females aged 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault. Of all victims under 18, majority of them are between the ages of 12 and 17, 66% of them. So what you're saying, child sexual abuse is a widespread problem. And like you give me those numbers, now we are seeing, that this is now, eventually, and by the way, they say that in future, these people who go through this are 4 times more likely to develop symptoms of drug abuse, about 4 times more likely to experience PTSD as adults, about 3 times more likely to experience a major depressive episode as adults. Which means that if we don't protect young people, especially if we don't protect them against some of these things, we are going to spend a lot of money in a public health crisis in future because we were not strong or courageous enough to protect children in their homes or protect young girls.
And that's already happening, Danish. We are not even, it's not a future thing. That's already happening because even with our parents who never had those structures already. We've seen the kind of children, how they parented, and the children that came out, we are seeing that. So if us who now want to be parents, the ones who want to be parents, do not think about these issues, we are going to repeat.
Exactly.
It will be worse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And repeating it is easy because I think doing the hard work, only majority of us will do the hard work. There's this principle I hate, it's called the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule, that 80% of the people will produce 20% of the results, 20% of the people will produce 80% of the results. So you find that majority of us, we are likely going to produce the homes we are raised in, we are likely going to do this damage, or we're going to overcompensate while thinking that, oh, by the way, me, I wasn't taken to boarding, let me take my child to boarding. But you now, that child will say, I never want to go to boarding school.
Exactly.
Maybe me, I grew up, I wasn't given toys, then you flood the child with toys. They one day they'll say, I never wanted toys, I wanted you. You're the biggest toy I want to play with you. I want to run. But I thought giving you a toy would fix all these problems.
It's that line they say, I don't know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Exactly.
You know? You think you're helping, but there you are, creating another hell.
Rix, so let us know your final thoughts around, I think this conversation started off as sort of like this vague conversation around purity culture, but it has gone and it become about accountability. But maybe you can give us your final thoughts and let us know how we can connect with you. And of course, I know you're also doing a very interesting event. I'd like my audience to know about it and to see how they can support you.
Right. I think we are very privileged that these spaces exist today. You know, engaging in this conversation, we have no idea how far it's going to go. So if we can start developing ways of unpacking these kind of conversations when we watch them at home, right? Being curious about each other at home. Parents, children, parents, the people in the home. Because I'm really passionate about how we live our lives in the homestead. I think the family is a very powerful instrument for community care. And we must start thinking of how we are showing up at home for each other. We must first start thinking there before you think of who will I be at church, who will I be in school, at the workplace, in the streets. We have to think about who we are at home, because that is where truth begins to be developed. You know, all these masks that we walk with, we have to start questioning those masks. You see, accountability structures, they will be different depending on culture, depending on space, depending on, you know, vocation. They will be different. And most of us will have to experience different levels of accountability depending on where we are. But if care is not at the center, if there's no affirmation of care, regardless of where we are, then we are dying. That's just what I'm saying. I'm available on Instagram at RixPoet, RixPoet, Onyango Otieno on Facebook. On the 26th of April, I have an event. I do hold events around storytelling on sex and reproductive health. So this time we are holding an event on the sex stories of persons with disability. They too have desires like you and I, Danish, and they have fantasies and they have their own escapades. And for me, it's an invitation for the rest of us to question ourselves, but also to humanize them as people who are also sexual beings and have desires like the rest of us. My idea about it again is what we are talking about, care, right? So the tickets are available on rixpoet.hustlesasa.shop, or you can just try to Google my name, Onyango Otieno or RixPoet, and you'll find me and information about the event. It's called Sex, Love, and Disability. My dream is to get to the individual and make the individual question who they are outside what they've been told they must be.
Very powerful words to end this edition of Manspeqtive Africa, your favorite show.
And of course, you can let us know what you think. The hashtag is Manspeqtive Africa. My name is Danny Shadongo across all social media platforms. If you're watching us on KTN, remember we are on YouTube, Manspeqtive Africa with the Q, that is the YouTube channel. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we are on KTN every Wednesday. You can tune in and let us know what you think about this content. Until next time, adios and may God bless you.